In this podcast, we have an artist whose work I absolutely love. It is Dylan Ekren. Dylan Ekren is a CG character designer at Netflix Animation, and previous to that was a character modeler at Walt Disney Feature Animation since 2010. He's worked on features like Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, and most recently Encanto, just to name a few. Dylan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we met in my country of all places, which is very rare. We were meeting
a while ago.
Yeah, the CG. I don't remember the name of the conference, but you flew over here with the Noman crew, I believe, at the time, who were doing a little like weekend kind of training thing here in Melbourne, which was great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I was lucky enough to be invited along on that trip.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And your specialty is obviously character modeling. And would you call yourself more of a modeler or a character designer? Because you obviously do both, looking at your portfolio.
I think I'm probably considered more a character modeler, but I think that the design skill factors in here and there. You know, I think it definitely helps boost things for sure. I don't often think of myself as a designer.
Okay. Is that common, by the way, to have both of those skills, or most people usually do one or the other?
I think most people tend to do one or the other generally. There's always people who do both, and it kind of goes on both sides. You know, there's 2D designers who dabble in 3D and 3D modelers who dabble in design. So that's kind of more like where I'm at.
Right. Got it. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I want to sort of get your sort of origin story and how you got to where it is. So this question might lead us there. Do you remember how old you were when you realized that art might be your career, or were you always artistic?
I've always done art. Like I've always been big into drawing and I screwed around with 3D stuff pretty early on, but I didn't know enough about it, and it was all just like, whatever I could find to download because it was prohibitively expensive. So yeah, I've always done art just for fun. And then in like towards the very, very end of high school, some counselor I had was like, oh, you could probably go to art school. And I never had even considered it until that moment. So
really?
Okay. Yeah, I got started way too late on that stuff. I didn't even know that this was like a viable career that you could go into.
Really? Okay. And art, like a career jobs counselor was the one.
Yeah, we had like high school counselors that would kind of be like, well, you should probably start thinking about going to college, and then of course that was one of the things that came up. And so I wanted to know more information about that. And I think I got like a Google search printed out that was like art school.
Oh, really?
Okay. I kind of had to do a lot of research on my own. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, just follow that road. You'll get somewhere. Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And up until that point, like what was it that made the counselor suggest that? Did you have like doodles all over your school books?
Mentioned it. Yeah, I think I was just probably in trouble all the time for like doing that anyway. It's like, oh, why aren't your grades higher? Because I was drawing when I should have been paying attention probably.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
Which happens to this day. So
nice. Got it. Okay. So you and did you have any sort of professional education, or were you just literally just dabbling, not even?
Oh yeah. I mean, I left high school and went to a state art school, like just something local. So
state.
I finished up high school. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's not exactly right, but it wasn't like a state college. So I left high school and I went to a place called Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design.
Okay. Yep.
And just because it was like the closest thing. I didn't know anything about art education, and people weren't learning as much on the internet, of course, as they are now. And so it seemed like the best way to go was a brick and mortar school, and the recruiters at that school agreed with me. So I went there, but like I wish I had known more at the time, because I almost got into some of the schools out here in California.
Yep.
and it would have been like such a totally different experience. But I like they were just like, well, you don't have enough life drawing to get in. Like everything else is probably fine, but we need to see some more life drawing from you. So of course I was like, well, I got to go to college next year, so I can't take time to go do more life drawing or something like that. And so I
Right.
just like went to college instead of, you know, building out more of a portfolio just because I had no idea. Like no one said that, and I maybe just, you know, couldn't figure it out on my own. But
Okay.
yeah, it just seemed like that was the progression of things. Like you finish high school, and then the next year you go to college, and so that's
Yes.
what I did.
Yes. Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Is by the way, is that something you would suggest to artists today to go to an art school, to a college?
I would make sure that they knew, you know, what the alternatives were to that, and like I think it really depends on how you learn. Like I
Okay.
don't regret going to that school at all, of course, but it's crazy how much good information is out there now. The
Mhm.
hard part is just like how do you find it? And it's
Right.
like a major, I don't know. I have like a it's like a sticking point for me. Like there is a ton of information that's out there, but only some of it is like worth your time really. And I feel like
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
major issue. I could see someone not going to college and opting for like an online education and just throwing money away because, you know, they maybe like me didn't know who to talk to or who to ask. And so they're just like, this guy seems like they know what they're doing. And, you know, so they go with that.
Mm,
I
mm,
hate to see that happen. But yeah,
yeah.
it's, I think my tendency is to say, you know, explore online opportunities. Like it just gives you access to a lot more people and a lot of more different kinds of information. And
Mhm.
so, you know, if you go to like a some school that's in your state or something, you may not get the same quality, you know. But that being said, sometimes you learn better in person and you've got other people around you that are kind of doing the same thing. There's a totally different feel to it, and
Yeah,
it's
there
something I
definitely
definitely
is.
don't regret getting from my school, even though we had to, you know, figure out a lot of stuff on our own.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Having people shoulder to shoulder with you, also that you can kind of like look
Hmm.
over and see their work and go like, all right,
Yes.
yeah, I'm on the same track, or like, oh, I'm behind.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that can be
It
helpful.
can be so, as someone who's like taught classes online too, it can be really isolating when you're just by yourself trying to do this stuff. So
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
mean
Yeah.
it's really like whatever works best for that person. And they may decide after a year or two that they don't want to do that. And at least then they'll have a better idea of what to look for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, on the note of what you were saying about there being good and bad content out there on the web, I totally agree. There's a lot of quantity.
Hmm.
Quality now is like it's like yeah, it's like you're thirsty and just like drinking from a fire hose. It's like there's way too much stuff coming at you.
Yeah, so
What
much.
what would you
Hmm.
suggest to a young artist that is thinking of like maybe they've seen a course for sale on Udemy or something, or even just,
Hmm.
free stuff? How do they know that the content is quality and worth watching?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think that maybe the instructor credentials have a lot to do with it. It's not everything, of course, because there's a lot of people who are very good, but I think what I see happening a lot is somebody takes a lot of courses from people that are very good and then they learn a lot and then they turn around and they start like kind of regurgitating that information,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
sometimes that happens like two or three times in a row. And so by the time sometimes people are getting this information, it's like second or third hand
Yeah.
down the road from, and none of those people along the chain have actually done this like in a environment that,
Yeah.
you know, that information is actually coming from. So that's the thing that I kind of rail against a little bit. But I
Yeah.
mean, I see it happen all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
actually,
it's like
funnily,
you,
on a related note, yeah, I was once looking up like
yeah.
how to create interesting characters with interesting design features, things like that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I saw like a lot of YouTube videos, that was sort of like 10 minutes long. These are the top 10 tips or something on this thing, and
Sure.
yeah, it was palpable that they
Yeah.
had just picked up a book, or honestly that they'd watched the three other YouTube videos who had also been copying the one that came before it, or the one that came. So they were all creating these tips that came from one
Yeah.
source, and it was
Yeah.
yeah. I was surprised actually at how much content there was, but how little there was in terms of like you could take from it that was actually learnable. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like sometimes the information is good because it's lifted wholesale from like a better video. And then but then like the work that they're showing you, there's like an incongruency there where they're like, you got to make sure, or whatever it is, they'll be talking about some principle of design, and then the work that they're showing is like not there. So
right. So
that's how you might know.
okay, got it. Yeah, like
So yeah, I would definitely like check credentials of
credentials.
whatever
Okay.
artist you're trying to learn from. There's certain like institutions that a lot of good artists will teach at. That helps too. So you got to definitely do your research.
Yeah, I agree. There's also though, I think, as you said, like it's not the only thing, because there are some conferences I've been to where I've sat
Yeah.
in a room with like who's like the industry leader at whatever this thing is. He's been doing it for 20, 30 years or something. And I walked out of it with no information almost. I couldn't glean anything. And whereas on the offhand, I've also learned things from like YouTubers who, I don't know, they've been using Blender for a couple of years and they've learned some things. And
same.
Yeah, and they're junior, but they're really good teachers. Are really good at explaining the concept that goes behind something.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, you can kind of get a bit of both.
Yeah, I get that's a really good point too. I'm not trying to be like you can only teach if you've like worked for 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that if there's good information to learn there, then that's one thing. I think what I'm more reacting to is like the sort of like self-professed like expert in something when they haven't actually done that work in some way.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So, but yeah, like for like so many different software things, like here's how I do this in ZBrush, or here's how I, build a whole scene out in Blender or something like that. Those are super valuable. I watch those things all the time. As long as I'm getting good information from it, I think it's awesome. And it's incredible how much of that is like just free.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'd say that's definitely my approach. Is like for something like character design, it's like, okay, look at the credentials, make sure this person's got like a portfolio that's actually decent that I can judge with my own eyes. And then also, hopefully, they've got some free lessons as part of the course. And I've bailed on several purchases because I couldn't. Like, I could tell I was not going to enjoy the course. It's also like, it just has to be right for you. Like, some people have said that, like, this course is amazing. It was so good. And, like, I couldn't get through 3 videos because I couldn't learn anything. So it's different for different people. So you got to make sure that try and get a teaser of it before you buy it and check that it's actually something you could learn from. I think that helps.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Maybe more tutorials and courses should do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then there'll be even more videos.
That's right. That's right. Watch these other YouTube videos before you do the course.
That's right.
Okay, so going back to your story. So you finished the state college. You went from high school. You went to the state college. And it was just like a local art school that it's a
4-year. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so it's a 4-year, just like a normal traditional art school, and emphasis on traditional. So they were really like rooted in drawing and painting. That's what their whole school started with. And actually, their CG program was like really new at the time that I took it. So another kind of thing to take a look at: how long has a school been teaching 3D and stuff like that? So because I didn't know anything. So I was like, oh, they've got computers. So that must be a good sign. And so we ended up...
Was this like the 70s?
No.
They have an IBM.
No. It was 2 years ago.
Okay.
So it was just like, I just don't think that they were ready to teach at like the level that they maybe should have been at the time. we had great instructors, but they were people who had worked in animation previously, so they didn't have a lot of like CG experience and stuff. And I just think that we spent a ton of time in the labs, just like really late at night, learning stuff on our own, because at that time, like CG Society was really big. So we would just go like trawl through the forums on CG Society and just like all night until they kicked us out, work on stuff. And yeah, it was cool. The animation department. So this school was great because they moved into what used to be like a tuberculosis rehabilitation facility in Colorado.
Nice. Okay.
And so all of the buildings on the campus were these historical buildings. It was a really beautiful place. But the animation department was in like this like dank underground concrete walled area, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that was the morgue. So that's where you guys are.
Nice.
It's the morgue."
Wow,
so that was great.
Dude. So building with a
well,
lot
for
of character.
us, it was like excellent. Yes, of course, it just made it even better.
Oh, that's funny. Get down there. That's where the artists go.
Yeah,
you get in there. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think probably I don't regret that school at all because I learned a ton and I met some amazing people there, and it was just like a good time in my life. But like the number one thing I walked away from that school with was like the ability to find out how to teach myself something, so just like if there's something I need to learn, I know how to go get that, and figure it out. I know to like fill the gaps in my knowledge. So
yeah, I've heard a few other artists talk about that as well. Was the school that the class that you were in, you'd say there were other students that were as hungry or like they were passionate as well, and that kind of rubbed off on you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I needed that, and they probably needed that too. Like having some kind of like competitive nature with some of the people you're in school with, I think really helps a lot. Mm-hmm. So I had there were like 2D guys, like illustrators that I felt competitive with, and there was 3D guys because we were all figuring this stuff out together. So someone would show up with like, I figured out like how to put a bump map on something, and it's like, what is this dark sorcery? So then like we would go into like, oh, I got to figure out how to do that on my stuff too, and then casually act like I knew how to do it all along. So
God, it's nice. Okay, so I assume that group, not all of them ended up working at Disney. What was it that made you different?
Well, I moved out here to LA for one thing. So after school was over, I was like, I'm not going to get a job in Colorado because at the time there was like, I think the statistic they gave me was like 200 animation places in Colorado, but only like a handful of those had more than one employee. So it was very, at the time, it just didn't seem like the prospects were very good. Like I might go into, animating teeth for like a dental company or something like that. Like I did some early freelance stuff that was just like, I know I don't want to spend my life doing this. I got to get out of here and do something a little bit more interesting. It just wasn't right for me. So I started doing research on schools out of the States. And so I ended up going to Noman in LA. Oh. So that was a huge step for me because obviously, that's like everyone that works there is working professionally. And it was just like another place where they would let you stay in the lab for way, way too long and work on stuff, which was like my only way to learn. And I absolutely do not recommend doing that to anybody who's trying to learn now. Like be way smarter than me.
In what way?
Some sleep.
Okay.
Well, I don't learn things very like, I don't know. I have a hard time picking stuff up. Like none of this comes very easily to me. It's all very hard work for me. So I have to like just bash my head against a wall, I feel like, to like get it, to finally understand it. I really have to screw everything up bad and then fix it. And it's the fixing it that I learn. So that's kind of like like I can follow a tutorial or something and that's great, but I really have to like break it and mess it up hard before I can actually figure out what I'm doing. And so that's what I mean, that's like all that we did. I think they changed their policy on how long people could stay there because of our class.
They call it the
And
Ekren
also,
rule.
it's worth noting that um, after I left Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, they were acquired by another school. So all of their stuff changed after I left. And I have no idea what it's like there now. I'm sure it's great. But
Okay.
like, and then Noman also, right after we left, they changed their entire program. So it's like a completely different, it looks
Mm,
totally different now. It's like way
really?
more upgraded now. Yeah, they really did a lot.
Ah,
So
wow.
that's cool.
Interesting. Yeah, that okay, so that sounds pretty crucial. It was taking that leap to say, I'm going to leave behind my friends and family, move to a completely new state, and go to Noman,
Yeah.
which is one of the top schools in the world for art. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you go.
I was going to say at the time it was big too. Like I just remember seeing um, like advertisements in magazines or something at the time, like CG World magazines. And it just seemed cool. Like they showed neat art, and I was like, I want to make monsters and learn how to render stuff. And so that's why I went. But yeah, a couple
What
of
year
us
was
moved
this, by
out.
the
We
way?
just
When
drove
did you
out.
go to Noman?
Oh god, 2005,
Oh,
maybe it was a
okay.
little, maybe 2003, 2005, somewhere around there.
Right.
I'm terrible with dates. I'd have to like actually look it up,
Okay, got it.
but somewhere around there.
Got it. So this was
Maybe a little. No. Maybe a little later than that.
got it. Were you using ZBrush?
So I got yes at Noman we definitely were.
Okay.
At yeah the previous school they didn't really believe in ZBrush at first. I
Okay.
got them to install. I got them to buy a bunch of licenses and install them on their computers. So
Okay, that's cool.
we're
Nice.
just using
Got it. Yeah, because
ZBrush
that must have
two.
been like
That's
the
what we started
start.
with.
Yeah, the start of ZBrush. Because I think it's only about,
Yeah,
was it 2001, 2002, something it started. Something around
yeah.
there. Anyway.
Actually, that probably contributed to the decision for Noman because they were the only ones putting out like DVDs at the time of how to actually use this software at like a high level. I mean, maybe there's others, but
Right.
those were the ones that you could find. And
Yeah.
so, I'd watch the DVDs and it's like, oh, this person actually teaches at this place. So you can go check it out there. So yeah, it was just ZBrush 2 and like Meets Myers DVDs on how to use ZBrush.
Wow, old school. And now we've just
Yeah.
got this world of content out there of too much
I know. It's just
learnings.
evolving so rapidly.
So on that note, what today are your favorite resources for learning? Like it could be a book, could be like a course, or it could be a YouTube channel. Where would you suggest that new artists go to learn about characters?
If you're trying to learn just the craft side of it, um, yeah, I think that there's some good classes out there. There's some like really well established, I think, classes on that'll give you all the foundations, all the fundamental stuff, and a lot of the like secondary, tertiary stuff too. Um, I I'm on YouTube all the time, and I just that becomes kind of a jungle that you wade through. But I'm always looking for like new information. I feel like that's kind of my background noise is just like throwing on YouTube tutorials and stuff. I probably do that too much, but um, yeah, I don't know. I haven't taken like a serious character class for a little while.
Okay.
I know that there's a lot of really good intro ones. Like Shane Olson has a really great, not intro, but like that's one of those ones that takes you like all the way through. I've never used ZBrush before to like how to do a full on character.
Ah,
So he's got a great
Shane
one.
Olson.
I taught a
Okay.
class. Yeah, Shane Olson, 3D character workshop, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, I have one that I teach occasionally at Mold 3D, but I
Yep.
haven't been able to do it since the pandemic started. So it's just been
Ah,
too much.
okay. So the course, it's not a like a series of videos that you just download. It's a live course that you have to.
Yeah, well, it's both. Like you could buy the videos self-paced and do it that way if you wanted to, like if that's a good
Okay.
way for you to learn,
Right.
like we talked about. But the main kind of thrust of the course was the videos, and then I would just give personalized, individualized feedback for everybody too. So I open up everyone's model and sculpt on it a little bit and tell them what I'm doing and why, and kind of try to like push it
Mm,
towards the final concept a little bit more. I think that's where
okay.
most of the good information there was. Like not most of it, but that's where all the good information I had in the video gets put into practice, I think. But
Okay.
it's so time consuming, so I just haven't been able to do it lately.
Okay, got it. So that's great to hear. I didn't know that there was a review component, obviously when it's running. But yeah, another question then. Like you must have seen so many students come through, and some of them do well and others don't. What would you say separates the superstars from the average?
I mean, the obvious answer I think is like the people who put the time in, who actually like take the critiques to heart and they experiment with stuff and they get in there and they screw up and fix it. You know, kind of like the way that I do stuff.
Okay.
But a lot of it, I mean, you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of people who sign up for these classes and they don't do the work until like 2 hours before they got to turn it in or something like that. I don't think they take it as seriously. So it's the difference between people who take it really seriously and people who don't. And regardless of skill level, the people who really take it seriously and they put some time in and they do research outside of the class too to bring their own information in, they're the ones who really advance further. And I've never seen anybody who didn't do that. Wait, what's I don't want to like double negative this. I've never seen anyone who didn't put that work in, like not go somewhere with it.
Ah, interesting. You know? Okay, so the people who
yeah.
show up really put in the hours. It's almost but and then it's kind of like one of those things. Is it the amount of hours they put in that led to it, or was it more the fact that putting in a certain amount of hours means you've got such a drive that you would have succeeded, you know? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that if you have the like the drive to finish like an individual project, then that says a lot about you as an artist, you know, like you can push through and get it done, especially under a timeline. Like my course was 8 weeks, which is on the very like long side of what you would get to make a character in like a professional environment. But it's still kind of a slog. So people have to really like be dedicated to it, I think.
Okay, got it. That's cool. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's fun. I love doing it. I just wish I had the time or like the mental bandwidth to do it right now.
Yeah, giving reviews and mentoring. It sounds like nothing, but it's it's like that's your day.
Yeah, it's hard. I miss it though. I'd like to go back to it, but yeah, I remember just like being totally exhausted.
Right.
So I had to stop.
Yeah. That definitely happens. Yeah, getting burnt out from just doing too many draw overs. No, I said the silhouette. You gotta.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's hard when you like give the same feedback every single week, and it's like I'm trying real hard to help, but it's just something isn't connecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. It definitely takes a good teacher to. I was reading this book that was talking about, what's the book called? It was basically like a deep dive into like, you know, performance athletes and people who excel, and more so the tutors. Like what sort of teaching is it that creates that superstar, that kind of thing? Because there's these pockets in the world where, you know, the best soccer players come out of here or the best tennis players come out of here. And so this guy went to these places and sort of met the teachers and sort of figured out what were they doing well and that none of the other teachers were. And it was sort of it was a really interesting book. I can't remember the name of it. I've mentioned it on a previous podcast, but anyways, he
I'd like to know.
Yeah, this one guy was I think he was a musician. Yeah, he was just a music teacher. And he was just, I think just like at a normal, like a high school somewhere in New York or something like that. But he'd like created so many successes, like some of these successful musicians like started there or were trained like one-on-one. And like the guy sat in for these like tutoring lessons, and like one of the courses, like one of the students, he was just really hard at, just like, come on, I said this tempo, you know, like that guy from Whiplash, not my fucking tempo, you know, like, fuck, no, throwing stuff. And then the next one was this girl who was like nervous and like shaky, and, you know, and he was just a completely different person. Like, okay, let's take it easy. What's going on? You know, like, and just sort of encourage
Yeah.
giving the right advice for the right person at the right time, which means you have to be switched on, you have to care, and you have to
Yeah.
like not just take what they've given you or what they've said, but like read between the lines and go like, I think she's struggling with this, but she thinks it's this, but I
Mhm.
think it's actually this. Yeah, it was, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
side tangent.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really like great skill to have. That's something I wish that something I'd like to develop more, I think.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I definitely like there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but there's a few things that I do know really well. So I'd like to try to, I don't know, be more useful, I guess, to the community. But I'm just trying to like find a way to do it that isn't like super time consuming and just kills me, or isn't some kind of I don't know, like a everybody pay attention to me type of thing, you know, like
Right.
I'm important. Let me speak.
Guilty. No. Yeah. Call yourself the guru. Put yourself on the internet.
Yeah. Hey, like,
um,
it worked though.
um, okay, so I guess sort of coming back to the student progress, what they're taking. What would you
Yeah.
say in characters specifically? What do you think are the biggest mistakes and myths, or like biggest waste of time that you see?
Oh man, I'll think about that for a minute. So, biggest waste of time. I think sometimes, I mean, maybe this isn't like the biggest thing, but I think sometimes people don't know, they're not thinking like what the end goal is when they go into learning about this stuff. So they might be thinking, you know, I want to work in games or something, and they'll take just like the wrong course to get there. Like they'll just take the wrong path, or
Okay.
they'll,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think that those like film and games are kind of on like I think they're kind of like on a converging course where
Hmm.
those skills are going to start to overlap a lot more, especially like towards the game side of stuff.
Hmm.
But you know, a lot of times I get people asking me like, "Oh, how can I get into feature animation or something?" And I'll see their portfolio, and it's like nothing but real time, you know, game assets or something like that, or sometimes like mobile game stuff. And it's just like, well, even though this work is fine for where, you know, for what you're using it in, it just doesn't translate over. So like there's a whole skill set that you need to learn to get there. So in a way that's kind of like, I mean, it's not a waste of time if that's what you use it for, but it's not going the, you know, towards what they want to do with it. But I would say, I don't know. I think a lot of, I'm guilty of this too, like obsessing over what kind of software they're using to do it. Like, I know that's like a cliche answer too. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of brush you use. It's, but people do really get obsessed with the tools. And I
Yeah.
think often another thing I'm guilty of is people, and I've had people like this in my class too, where they fall into like a tutorial mindset, or like they just get stuck in like a loop of taking classes forever and never actually doing anything outside of that. And
Mm.
so, and, you know, at a certain point, you have to break free from that and go do your own stuff and put that into, you know, practice and find out what kind of artist you want to be, I think.
Mm.
Um, so, I mean, it feels like you're making progress, I guess, when you take like tutorial after tutorial and you're like filling up, you know, all these like project files, but it's not really getting you anywhere,
Yeah.
um, past a certain point. So I think that happens a lot.
It does, yeah. And I know personally, like, because I was, yeah, last year and year before that, learning 2D on the side, characters
Yeah.
specifically, actually. And yeah, I noticed it was such a huge drop from the quality of work that I did after it, like through a tutorial, following
Hmm.
the person's strokes. Like I would do these amazing drawings, and I'd just be like fucking like pumping the air, like yeah, I got
Yeah.
this, like I can do this. And then the
Yeah.
tutor was like, all right, now do a character of your own, and it was
Yeah.
pew, and it was so obvious. I didn't actually know what I was doing. I was like, anyone can mimic,
Yeah.
right? Mimicry is like the human brain is even wide for it, they say. And like this
Sure.
stroke, make the line go this angle, this thing. You do that like 1,000 strokes. So you've drawn the character that the tutor did. And if they're a bad tutor,
Mhm.
that will literally be it, like a paint by numbers approach. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, actually forcing yourself to do that project after that by yourself. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you miss that, if you just go on to the next tutorial, you can shoot yourself in the foot because you don't realize you haven't checked that criteria item off yet because you didn't learn it. So you think you actually know perspective, but you didn't. So don't move on to proportions yet until you've done perspective. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you follow along a lesson plan, and no matter how good that lesson plan is, ideally the person teaching it has done it thousands of times before, so they really have it down. But you've
Yeah.
maybe done it just this one time, and
That's
so you really need to like do it a lot more.
yeah.
I would say I just thought of this too. Like I think another huge waste of time is uh, social media to a huge degree.
Oh hell yeah.
I think
Yeah.
people become, especially now more than ever, become just obsessed with that. Like that's who they are as an artist. And I'm super guilty of this too. I have to take breaks sometimes because I'm just like doing I call it the comparison trap, where you're just like stuck in this mode of like looking at other people's work and you're just like, I suck compared to this person. Like I'm never gonna, how did they even do that? Like,
Mm,
um, I'm super guilty of it. And I see people do that all the time. Like Twitter is, it seems like it's half people saying how much they hate their art and how bad they are, and you know,
and the other
like,
half
or talking about
hating
like
each
how
other.
depressed they are. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I mean, every flavor of toxic is on Twitter, of course. But I think that like um, really focusing in on like the numbers and stuff. Obviously, there's some use to that, but not until you've reached a certain point. I think
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
like with your career. Um, but like early on, just starting out, like the number of likes and retweets and stuff, it's just like those are just fake numbers that have nothing to do with how good you are as an artist.
Yeah.
And it's not like your art and the reaction that you get online is not a value judgment. You know, it shouldn't be
Yeah.
anyway. Think about how you use Instagram or Twitter. You just like scroll through, you're like, oh cool, likes, next thing. Sometimes you might like do a little bit deeper dive or something, but people are killing themselves to make a piece of art, and then it's just because of, I blame Instagram and Twitter for this, not artists. They've just made everything so disposable now that
Mm,
that's like you'll get people's eyes on it for like 1 second and then they scroll on to the next thing, and
yeah.
so I just don't think it's worth beating yourself up about it as much. And I'm saying that as someone who struggles with that a lot, so I'm working on it, and you should too.
I got it. Motivational. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. But that thing of like
it's
comparing
hard.
yourself, it's
Mm.
it's almost like you're wired to in a way, because
Oh yeah.
like, okay, so we're both doing this thing, right? I'm building a wall, he's building a wall, and it would be stupid or like almost impossible to not look at their wall and compare it to my wall and go, oh, he did that
Absolutely.
much better than I did. And he's been doing it less
Mhm.
time than I did. And so
Yeah.
there's that. You see, someone posts up on Twitter, lunchtime sketch, 30 minutes, and it's this, masterpiece. And you're like, oh, God damn it. I
Yeah,
worked I
but
worked for 10 days on this piece, and it is garbage in
yeah,
relation to that.
I think we've all been there for sure. You're also taking that at face value, like someone might have worked on that for a little bit longer than their lunchtime.
Oh yes, that as well. That definitely is yeah. Yeah, trusting
Yeah.
what the
That's a
artist
good
said.
it's a good defense against the comparison trap, is you just look at everybody else's stuff and go, there's no possible way that they did that in the time that they did.
Yeah, that's right.
They're lying to
Liar,
make themselves look good.
liar, liar. Yeah. I think the other one though, I said it before, is like uh ArtStation unfortunately does not show you the amount of hours that they have in their lifetime of learning, right? So when you're
Mm,
browsing, and because of course it's impossible, but like, of course, everybody has different amounts of experience. And so you're not seeing that because it's impossible to, unless they were to self-profess it or something. But even then, it would be like, okay, so you started drawing in 2000, but like, how many hours have you, how many mentors did you sit
Yeah,
under? How many like repeated sessions of this? So you're just seeing something that, somebody's got 20 years experience behind you and you just started. Be stupid to imagine that you could pull something off in the same time. And yet your brain does that every day, every time it sees something
sure.
without taking into account the experience.
Oh yeah, there's so much context that doesn't go into that because like there's something I've noticed really. Most of my Twitter breaks during the pandemic have been because like you just see like people that you follow just banging out like one thing after another. They're just like,
Yeah.
here's a new character, here's a new thing. Now I taught myself Unreal, and now I'm, it's like, holy shit, how do they have the time to do this? Like I sat down and I took a look at my schedule a couple of months back, and I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to like maximize my time so I can learn more stuff. And I was like, all right, I got a full time job. I've got 2 kids. I have like, I'm in a marriage. I've got a house I got to take care of. I've got a really large cat that needs to eat all the time. And so at the end of the day, if I want to still get enough hours of sleep to like get up and be functional to do all that stuff, I have like 2 hours maybe to do stuff during the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So, and that's if I'm being like really efficient in every aspect of my life. So it's a system that I continue to tinker with. I'm really like an optimization junkie,
Okay.
in theory. So I'm like really, I love trying to plan out stuff and try to like figure out like how to be a better worker. I read a lot of books about that stuff. Um, but it's an ongoing project. Maybe if I spent more time working on my projects and less time writing calendars,
Right.
I'd get more done.
Yeah. Yeah. It is fun though it is fun to plan. To just sit there and just write stuff
Yeah.
in a journal and never do it.
I think I read something once about how planning to do stuff or like saying that you're going to do something kind of satisfies the same part of your brain as actually doing that thing. And so
Right.
that's why I don't post work in progress stuff on Twitter anymore, because I feel like I'm done with it then. And
Yeah,
then
you get that hit.
like
Yeah.
sit like yeah, if I try to get like too micro with my daily planning and stuff like that, um, then it feels like I've already accomplished that. And then I have to spend the rest of the day being like, oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I ran out of time to do that. Let's move that to tomorrow.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, true. Interesting. Yeah.
it's a balance.
Going back to just educational resources. Yeah, like let's say someone like myself or someone who's in arts, but they want to learn character design, character modeling. Yeah, are there any specific courses or like where would you suggest they start? What would they learn, or maybe not even like a specific course, but what learning curriculum should they follow? What criteria do you think they should focus
Um, I kind of feel like learning the tools obviously is well, maybe not. Learning the tools, the foundation of what you want to do is good place to start. Learn
Okay.
how to use Maya or Blender or whatever tool you choose to use,
Okay.
and then probably ZBrush if you're doing character stuff. I know Blender can do great sculpting and stuff, but it's not the same as ZBrush yet, in my opinion.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
I would say learn at least those 2 things, so that you've got like an arsenal and you've got the tools to kind of do what you want to do. Because if you're trying to like just like make characters at a certain level and you're also trying to learn the program at the same time, something's going to give, along the way. So it's really tough to do that. And so yeah, I think like just learning the fundamentals first, at least just till you're comfortable in the program, and then you can kind of figure it out from there. I think that all the learning, everything has to be project based. I think you need to have a goal in mind. There's no sense in, it's like like drawing tutorials where they're like, draw a box. Now draw like a box at a different angle. It's like you can do that for a million years and it's not really going to help you draw a city, so like I think that everything has to have like an end goal in mind, It's something I'm
Yes.
really like have turned on to a lot with my own practice is it's got to have somewhere to end up. And so definitely like keep that in mind because it's kind of like one I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly there. There's too many like tutorials and classes that are not they don't really go anywhere. It's just like make a random shape or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm trying to say. Um, I
Having
just think it
having a
needs to have like a
North Star is important. Where you're headed.
yeah, yeah. And then so like if you can say like, oh, in this project, I'm gonna learn, how to do hopefully like stylized characters, and then maybe also like some technical stuff too. So like maybe hair, or I'm gonna try to do some texturing on this or something like that. That's where I'm at with my own kind of learning now. Is just like
Mm.
there's one thing that I want to try to learn on every new thing that I do, and then hopefully I'll be a real artist someday and I can put it all together and it'll be like I'll finally be accepted. So
Got it. Got it.
yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah,
The
no, it definitely
course,
is.
like
So
the
having
path, yeah.
yeah. So before you even can establish the path, you got to know where you're going and what
I
you're
think
aiming
so.
at,
Yeah.
right? And then once you've
Yeah.
got that, you got to have the basic knowledge of whatever tool it is you want to do. If it's 2D, it
Hmm.
could be Procreate on iPad or even just a pencil. And if it's
Sure. Yeah.
sculpting, ZBrush, whatever. And then the foundation, because this is something I'm really curious about, is particularly stylized characters, but really just character design in general. There seems to be these fundamental foundational skills of design that I myself are lacking, and I have no idea what they are. But I just know anytime I try to design something, it just looks like the realistic object that the reference that I was
Mm.
referencing. How do you transform
Mm.
that reference, that idea, into shapes that actually look good, that are aesthetically pleasing? What are some of those foundational
Yeah, that's
skills?
a great question. I think a lot of it's funny because a lot of like you think about Disney characters and stuff. I'll speak mostly to that because that's what my background is mostly in. Um, obviously they're known for great appeal, and I think a lot of what goes into that is reality. Like it's like you can't really stylize something without knowing what the real version of that should look like.
Mm.
And so I think that the stylization is sort of like just pushing on the rules that already exist. So you're not trying to like it's not like the worst defense of like a bad character design or something is like, oh, it's my
It's
style. Oh, I meant to
stylized.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's just stylized. It's like, well, okay, but there's no construction happening here. There's no foundational knowledge. So I think a lot of it is just rooted in foundation. It's rooted in knowing how to do things the correct or the right way first, and then you kind of like
Mm.
teaching appeal is really hard, right? Because it's not only subjective, but it's also like this sort of ethereal concept. It's really more of a concept than like a blueprint. Like you can't just
Yes.
I don't know. Someone sent me this thing earlier today that was like, oh, here's a tool that will like make all of your stuff appealing, and it was basically like a ruler that was broken into like fourths, maybe fifths. I don't know, and it was just like make sure everything lines up with the marks on this, and that's all that they were doing to make their character. And I was like, that's very. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's no I don't know. There's no
Yeah.
philosophy behind that.
There is
So
there's something
I guess
really appealing about the not the appealing design. I'm talking about the appeal of rules for great art, because I
yeah.
love that
I
stuff
mean,
myself. It's like rule of thirds, the golden circle. Like, yes, big, middle,
yeah,
big, medium, small. Like this number of ratio. I'm like, what's the exact ratio
yes,
of the big to the small? And it's like, it depends. And it's like, damn it, no, I want to tell me, like,
yeah. No, exactly. There's so much of that that's just a feel, and
Mm.
I mean, basic. Okay, so I Love that stuff too. I think that that is like the foundation of appeal is learning all that stuff. Yeah, rule of thirds for sure. Maybe not so much the golden circle thing,
Yeah,
but like,
I call BS on
um, yeah,
that.
that one's kind of weird. Or like I saw there's this great one that looks like. Have you ever been to like a casino and seen the like the pin or it's not pinball, but what's the word?
The roulette. Oh,
No,
the
slot machines.
slot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the slot machines, and then they've got like all those crazy lines that go through there. There's somebody like selling a pack of like different line overlays that you can put on your artwork, and it's like as
Oh,
long as
yeah,
everything lines up with these lines. I was just like, I don't think so.
yeah.
Um,
The
but
other
I don't
the
know. Maybe
other
that works for them.
really that that I noticed. I signed up. I bought this course. I won't say the name of the course, but it was like composition course because I was really interested. Like, is there some magic to this? Is there some trick? And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like pulling up famous paintings and going like this lines up with this, and you can see that that now directs your line across
Oh
horizontally to
yeah.
this and this square, and it was like it was appealing because you're like, yeah, yeah, it does kind of line, and then you go, wait a minute, that works for this painting, and the other
Yeah.
five paintings that you scoured the web to find that fit this rule. What about the millions of others that are
Sure.
great and break the rule? Shouldn't that
Sure.
imply that it's not a rule and it's just some coincidences for these five paintings?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's getting too complicated. Trying to find some kind of like a template to solve these problems. I think that it's really just a lot of it is feeling, and it's something that you develop by doing it a lot. But there's
Right.
also things like when you fall back on those basics, you know, like rule of thirds. That's a great one. Um, they come into play more as a way to like troubleshoot stuff that isn't working. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times you'll be making something and you're like, why does this suck? Why is this not looking the way that I think that it should? So you start taking a look at it like, oh, it's because if I draw a line from the head down to the feet, everything is exactly like 50% away from each other.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like the waistline is exactly 50% between the head and the feet. The knees are exactly between the waist and the feet.
Too
So that's
predictable.
something that yeah. So I find that a lot of drawings that I'm working on or characters that I'm working on, you know, oftentimes I'll diagnose it like that, you know, and it's like, oh, of course, it's the fundamental crap that I should know like right off the bat, but you don't.
Mm.
But I mean, I guess you do know it because it comes into play later and it helps. But
Right,
maybe
right,
that's the difference between someone who knows that stuff and not. I guess you could fix it after the fact.
right. What okay, so going back to the experience and having a feel for understanding when something is right and wrong. It's yeah, putting in the hours. Is that okay? So let's take an example of like simplification. Something I just cannot for the life of me understand is when to simplify a form. If I'm making a face, I'm trying to do this caricature of Norm Macdonald, comedian that just
Mm-hmm.
passed, and I'm like, I'll make it stylized, and it's like, and I did all these little variations of it. And I'm doing this eyes and this the thing of this, and it's like the more I work on it, the more details I start adding to the point that it's like it's just weird because it was like style. It started stylized and then it just got realistic, and I can never know what parts. Like, do I simplify the nostrils? Am I supposed to be simplifying the chin? How would you go about learning something like that? I don't know. That's a broad question.
For that kind of thing, like, well, yeah, caricature is really hard to do. I think in general, it's hard to do in 3D. It's hard to do in drawing, and I think that it's more about the proportions and like the layout of things than it is about like simplifying the anatomy. I think that that also can factor in, but that's really more for maybe overall and like level of detail. Because I'm sure you've seen caricatures that are like insanely simple, but they just work really well because everything lines up exactly right. And
Right.
so, and even then, it's not so much about like using calipers to measure and making sure that things line up the way that they would on that person's face. It's about exaggerating those relationships, right? So it's like if someone has eyes that are like, have you ever seen a? This is not to say anything about how he looks, but like like the most successful Ryan Gosling caricatures have like his eyes are very close together and like high up on his face, you
Uh
know?
huh. Uh
Like I
huh.
can see it in my head. And then got like that bit like kind of simplified long, pointed chin, and like that goes so far towards who that guy is. Like if you can, I think that the simplification comes in the relationship between the features more than, or that's where the caricature is, I guess. And then you can kind of try to dial up and down the detail level from there.
Okay.
I can't think of, there's a guy who does caricature stuff like that where it's very, very exaggerated, but then he paints it in an ultra realistic way with like a lot of detail.
Oh yeah.
And
I think another one. Famous guy.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to guess a name because I'm probably going to be wrong. But it's
there's a lot.
What
Yeah.
makes
If you just go to Pinterest
really
and just type
successful,
in caricature, yeah.
But I think what makes those really successful is more about like the exaggeration of those feature relationships and less about the amount of detail that they put into it.
Right. Okay. For the caricatures, yeah.
Yeah.
I think and something else I learned, because I did this, spent 6 months trying to learn caricatures before I learned the realistic stuff. Just word of advice, wrong order to do it. Anyone listening, wrong way to do it.
But that's how you learn.
You go down this road for a long time, waste all the time in the world. But anyways, yeah, I was doing the caricatures.
Carnival.
And caricatures are all about exaggerating the ground truth, right? And so you got to you look at this face and you have to know what deviates from the average, right? Is it the eyes are too close together, or is it they're far apart, or is it the nose is too big, or is it small? And if you don't know, if you haven't done enough faces realistically, you don't know what those things are. So I was just like literally flailing around in the dark. It's like, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Here's 50 versions of it. Which one? And they're like, none of them look even remotely like Leonardo DiCaprio, because I just didn't know what, but anyways, I can't remember where I was going with that. But yes,
I mean, it's all about Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say in relation to the exaggerating the relationships, I learned it was like you can't exaggerate everything, because if you exaggerate everything, then nothing's exaggerated in a way. Like if the eyes are big, the ears are big, the hair is big, the nose is big, the chin is big. It's like, well, now it looks like nothing. So you have to, this book, it was a great book I was reading about caricatures. But yeah, it explained it as like a, like clay. If you've got a clay head sculpture thing and you want to exaggerate the ears, you've only got a certain volume of clay to pull from. So you have to take the clay from somewhere else. If you want to make the ears big, you got to pull some from the chin. So now the chin has to be
That's a good way to think about it.
That stuck with me. But anyway. No,
that's a really good way to think about it. Yeah. I was going to say it's something nerdier than that, but that's exactly the same point I was going to make.
Oh, okay. Nice. That's cool. Yeah.
That's a good way to think about it, for sure.
Yeah. So your designs have that. It was actually like I used to make a like my North Star of like, what am I aiming for? Like simplified characters. Quite a few of your pieces were in there. It nailed it. Yeah, so your learning, your education to get there was Gnomon. Then you worked. Yeah, okay. Let's go back. Maybe what happened after you finished Gnomon?
So I finished Gnomon with like a CG generalist portfolio.
Okay.
So I knew a little bit about everything, but I wasn't super great at any one thing. I think I was definitely leaning more towards characters at that point. And kind of on my own, I was more leaning towards stylization. At that point, at least, mostly Gnomon stuff was about, film, like VFX type of stuff. So like monsters and disgusting aliens and stuff like that, which I love that stuff, but it's not what I wanted to do. So I was kind of going towards, stylization a little bit more. And so a lot of that just came from my own experience in probably drawing and just like the type of art that I like to look at. So after Gnomon, so I finished Gnomon and I'm like, I've got this CG generalist portfolio and I'm ready to go work in a 3D place. And it's like another 2 years before I do any 3D again. So I go to, I just started freelancing around LA doing like illustration jobs and stuff.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of drawing, just nothing but drawing. And I was working at a place called Zoic for a while.
Okay.
Zoic is like a VFX place out here. They do all kinds of different stuff. They do like TV effects, commercials, video game stuff sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a really fortunate place for me to land, because even though all the work there was like contract based, like at the end of whatever project you're doing, you're out, you're just gone. And most of the people who work there are just freelance. You just
Yeah.
like kind of show up and work
Okay.
in their building during the time that you're working, and then when they're done, you're just like, you're out, you're gone.
Okay.
So but because I knew how to do 3D stuff and I knew how to draw and I kind of knew how to do a bunch of the little things, I basically was just full time there for like a long time.
Okay.
There would be periods of like a week or two where I was home, but then they'd call me and be like, do you know how to texture something? And I'm like, yeah. So I went and had work for like a month, and then you leave again and like, do you know how to storyboard something? And I'm like, yeah. So then I got to storyboard something for a while. So that was fun.
Okay.
But being exposed to like a lot of different things.
That was your first like work
good.
experience post college school?
Yeah, that was like the first like serious one. I used to go to like coffee shops around LA and just leave drawings all over the place, and so I got a lot of like little freelance jobs from there.
Really? Wait, that
because
worked?
people would just like,
no way.
Totally, it totally works.
Wait,
Yeah.
hang on. So you would draw something in the coffee shop, a setting.
Yeah,
people.
I would just go to. All right, so this did two things for me. One is it got me some work, and it also got me to completely get rid of my like preciousness about art. Which I think I definitely recommend that for anyone, especially doing 2D art, but just in general, don't be precious about it. So I would go to like coffee shops and just do like as many drawings as I could while I was there. I would just bring my stuff with me, and then I would just leave them there. Or I got these, I don't have any here, but I had these like self-adhesive magnets that I found on Amazon that I would just peel the backing off and then like stick drawings to metal stuff around LA.
No way.
And these are just like original drawings,
That's
that I would just do with like marker and pen and stuff. There's hundreds of these out there. And so, yeah, I would just put like my Instagram on the back of it or something like that. And someone would contact me for work. I think that's actually probably how I got into Zoic. Somebody saw one of those. I don't remember. But I have gotten work that way.
That is the wildest like method that I've heard that to actually work. That's crazy.
But it's like, it also really helped me just like let go of any attachment that I had to those things, because you put time into it. It's something you put time into it. You obviously care about it, at least to some degree, but then you just totally give it away. And there's like a 90% chance that it just ended up in the trash. Like somebody just walked by and was like, oh, clearing off a table. That's why I started sticking them to things.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I also, so I'd stick them to stuff. I had like these little self-adhesive like photo frame standees. So I would make like little like portraits of people that didn't exist, and then just like leave them places. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's funny.
Wow.
Or I like on the back of receipts and stuff, I would do that. One time I was at a restaurant and I left a drawing, and the server ran out after us and was like, I already have one of these from like somewhere else that they worked, and they pulled it out of their wallet and they had a drawing that I had done like years before that.
Whoa,
so,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So they'd kept it. It wasn't like stop leaving these everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, no one ever really got mad about it, which is nice.
That's good.
I don't know why they would.
That's when you know
the only people who
strategy's not working. People are actually
the only
mad.
People. Right. Yeah, that's such a silly reaction too. I've only had people get mad when they like figure out that you're drawing them in public.
Oh, really? They
Sometimes
don't like that.
People will get angry. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it takes a certain type of person to be angry about that, I guess.
It's also like I could just photograph you if I wanted, but I'm drawing you instead.
Yeah. Somehow that's weirder.
It is definitely weirder, actually. Now that I've said that aloud, yeah, the drawing guy, he's weird.
Yeah,
I've done that though. Yeah, I've gone to a shopping center and just drawn people and felt so creepy while doing it.
Good way to do it. Well, it's a good way to get over that too. Most people enjoy it and they really carry it. I like it. It's good observation. People watching is so valuable. I really missed that during this pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's I say get out there and look at people if you can.
Hmm.
It
Got
helps
it.
everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that influenced your okay. So you got a job at Zoic
yeah,
from the
yeah.
craziest strategy that worked, and then what?
So and then I left Zoic to do the talent development program at Disney. So I found out about that, and that's kind of like their apprentice training program there.
Right.
I found out that they had an opening for that, and I was like, I don't really do 3D anymore. I haven't done it so long. Like my portfolio sucks, and this is why. Yeah, so I don't know. It was a bad mindset to be in for sure, but I did it. I applied. I had to like reteach myself ZBrush really because I hadn't been using it for so long,
Hmm.
and so like I don't know, maybe a couple weeks before the portfolio deadline, I did like a brand new character that I'd never tried to do. I did like an animal character
Okay.
and just put it together with my portfolio, and I got it was enough to get in, so I got in.
Damn, that's
They
cool.
said that that animal
Okay.
character like made the difference though, so
Ah,
being
interesting.
able to spot some kind of weakness in your portfolio, I think is good. Ask other people because that's what I did. They were like, "You don't have any animals," so I did an animal,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
and that's
that's
why I'm here talking to you.
I actually thought the advice was the opposite. Like, don't put stuff in your portfolio that, like, don't fill it in. Don't fill up your portfolio with stuff that you're not good at because it will
Oh
often.
no,
Okay.
don't! I didn't make it look like I was bad at it. I tried to make it look
Oh,
good,
oh,
but like,
oh, all right. Maybe that's yeah.
but it was
It comes without
it
saying.
was a way. It wasn't just a way to fill up my portfolio. It was a way to um, add more dimension to it. I think because all I had in there was character stuff that was, sort of similar, I guess, kind of along the same vein. So having something that was a little bit different than that, but it was still stylized, was still appealing,
Right.
helped illustrate that I knew shape language, or
Okay.
could learn. I thought I knew a lot about like making art and stuff before I started at Disney, but man, I don't think I really started learning about how to make art until after I started there.
Wow. Yeah. So, what's it like
For
at
sure.
Disney? You've got just amazing people you're learning from every day.
It can be. So yeah, my experience at Disney was great. Like just there's just a ton of stuff to learn there, but I had like really excellent mentors. It was really fortunate to get in through the talent development program because you kind of get like 6 months to suck at your job um, until they decide whether or not they're going to keep you. But
Mm.
during that time, if you are like really dedicated and show, that you can learn stuff and you actually do learn stuff and grow as an artist, like it can be really huge. So that's what I did. And I just tried to like learn as many different disciplines that were related to modeling as I could. And I think that helped. It's not just understanding how to do your job, but also how your job fits into that pipeline. Just as
Mm.
advice to like get into a place like Disney, I think you need to kind of understand what your work turns into and how it affects other departments and stuff downstream of you.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just the opportunity to learn from people and just go bug people all the time was really helpful, I think.
Right. Right.
And working like it's very collaborative there, so you work like right next to the character designers and stuff. They're not just like sending down designs from on high and then you kind of have to like push the right buttons until it's good enough. It's
Mm.
they're kind of there helping you, so you learn just a ton by
Hmm.
working directly with those people. I think every place that has like that kind of dynamic should do it the
Hmm.
same. Work
Right.
with the design and modeling should definitely be like the same department almost.
Right. Okay. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
So
often wondered,
yeah.
like people at studios. I feel like they almost have like an unfair advantage in that, like
Mm,
most of us are trying to find a school that's got like a teacher that has any experience in the industry whatsoever, right? And that is teaching a
yeah.
workflow that is true to the industry and is checking all the right boxes. And then if you get that
Mm,
one job at Disney or Pixar or like just a nice studio that gets it. It's like now you're with the icons that the books are written about and you can tap them on the shoulder, maybe. This is my what I imagine it is at a studio, so correct me if I'm wrong. But then it's like you're getting like feedback from the people that you idolize. I don't know,
Yeah. Oh
it feels
yeah, for
cool.
sure. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely like that all the way up until, I mean, I was there for 9 years. It was like that up until I left.
Wow.
Um, just, we mentioned like having sort of a competitive feel when you're in school, and you're kind of surrounded by people that are just as driven as you, and, are interested in making the best that they can. And it's like that there, but it's everybody. And so it's like,
Wow.
there's no lack of inspiration, right? So whether or not someone is doing something amazing and you're inspired by that, or you're trying to be as good or better than other people that you're
Okay.
working with.
Right, right.
Maybe it's not like that for everybody, but that's the fuel that works for me.
Okay, got it,
So
got it. And is it
yeah.
like the sort of the hierarchy of artists? Is it like the hero character? Is that the one that like the most experienced like OGs get to who designed Elsa? You know what I mean? Like I assume it wasn't a junior.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of those characters go through a bunch of different people's hands. So I'm sure, I don't know how, I didn't work in biz dev, so I'm not really sure how their department worked exactly. But yeah, usually they'll, I think that probably for some of the main characters, they'll kind of go with like a more experienced designer, but which it's not always the case. I think it really depends on what that person's strengths are.
Mhm.
And they do like to give, people get opportunities to try new stuff and kind of design bigger things. But it's such a huge iterative process, and it often does go through multiple people's hands.
Mhm.
So someone will be like Elsa specifically. You mentioned she went through so many different designs. I remember, like, I'm sure you can find in like the Frozen art book or maybe some other places online, like the earlier versions of her were so different than what they ended up with.
Really? Okay.
And
Yeah.
then it comes to that final destination through just like that iterative process, working back and forth, because they build it, they like design it out, it gets approved by whoever else needs to approve it, and then they start building it in 3D. And that's been kind of the push, is to get characters into 3D as fast as possible.
Okay.
Makes sense, making a 3D movie. And so from there, they continue to develop and iterate. And so it's like, it's kind of fun to see it like whittle down, because it always starts in its most extreme form, like the farthest out, like weirdest version of the character. And
Uh-huh.
then they kind of like bring it into reality a little bit more, of like something that's like, oh, this is more feasible, or this is more relatable on some level.
Ah,
And every main character has gone through some level of that.
really? Okay.
It's pretty cool to see.
I've actually heard that as a kind of a strategy. It's like when you're designing something, you don't know where the wall is, where the ceiling is until
Mm,
you've gone past it. There's even a famous quote that explained
yeah.
that. But like, so would you suggest that as kind of like, do you do this in your design? Like, I'm designing a tiger, like, let's make him the craziest in this direction and then pull it back rather than play moderate and then increase.
I I think that's great advice. I don't know if I always do that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think definitely like trying to break it first, like push it as far as it can until you're like, all right, it doesn't really work. We need to like dial it back, is a good way to go. Because it's like when you're negotiating for a job or something. If you come in and you're like $20 and they're like, no problem, then you know that you probably should have negotiated more. Like if you're too safe about it, then it's not going to be as good probably as it should be. So it's
Ah,
always, I think it's always better to go a little bit too far.
right, right. So sort of treat your mind like the job interviewer, the one you're negotiating the job with, and go like he's going to take
Yeah,
that because it's going to be too simple, too easy.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you go wild, and then he
yeah,
goes, "Whoa, no, 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 dial it back."
yeah,
Got it. That's funny. Okay, I like that.
exactly.
Okay, okay. So
But then
it's an
it's
iterative
also different.
process at
Like
Disney. Okay.
it is, but it's also like there's so many other factors to consider there. If I'm designing for myself, it's one thing, because I can go as crazy as I want, and there's no one that's going to be like, well, you probably shouldn't. This probably isn't going to play very well in Europe or something like that. So like it's
Mm,
I can do whatever I want. But in like a huge, gigantic machine like Disney like that, they have to think about so many different facets,
Oh,
and they
really?
really like. It can be frustrating as a modeler because you see these amazing designs coming down the pipe, and you're like, I can't wait to get my hands on this and make something no one has ever seen before. It was like that every single show. And I'm going to explain why it's not necessarily a bad thing to say, but every single show you'd see stuff coming in and it's like, no one's ever done this before. Like, this is insane stuff. Like, I can't wait to make this. It's going to be so cool. Because it's weird and it's like, it's got like a different feel to it. And so we started iterating on it, and eventually it kind of gets like they shave the size of it off a little bit and they kind of bring it back into Disney territory, right? So
Okay.
it's like a little bit more recognizable as like a Disney thing. And not to say that it doesn't start that way, but it always starts more extreme and then kind of dials it back. And I totally understand why they do it. There's a lot of it that goes into, making the story work, and just like how interesting the character is has like an effect on how they read in the story. It's like there's so many facets to this, and I'm glad that there's people that are way smarter than me that are in charge of figuring that stuff out, because everything would look insane if I was in charge. So,
You can't
but yeah,
make a
it's like
toy
it's
out of
something you kind of
this.
learn.
Rubbish.
Yeah, like when you first start, you're like, oh, why can't we have this insane character? Like Goro from Mortal Kombat was in like the first version of Wreck-It Ralph, and you're like, why are they cutting him out of the movie? And then of course now, as like, I've been working for a while around these types of companies, around these types of people, it's like, oh yeah, of course they're not going to put Goro from Mortal Kombat in there. So in a lot of ways it makes
Wait, hang
sense.
on.
And
I
that's
don't know
another.
Goro. What is he? Violent?
Oh yeah, he's like a huge four-armed monster that like shreds people's limbs off and stuff.
Nice. Yeah,
So
yeah. It's Disney safe.
they did. Yeah, yeah,
Stay
trying
that.
something new. Sure.
Push the boundary.
Exactly. But then, I mean, that's another thing too. Like, maybe this is like a total change in topic a little bit here, but like, you can't get too. Everyone wants to do a good job, of course. When you're working on a collaborative team, especially if you're making a film or something like that, everyone wants to do a great job and do like the coolest stuff that they can. But you can't be too. You can't wrap up your identity too much in the art that you're making for other people, because it's not yours at the end of the day. Like, at any point during my career, they could have just been like, "You're out of here." We can find 9,000 other modelers that can do what you can do.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's like,
don't get
and that
precious.
would of course be devastating. Yeah, you don't get, exactly. That's my number one takeaway. Don't get precious with your art. Throw your whole sketchbook away every once in a while. Maybe don't do that. I did that. Maybe I regret doing that sometimes. But,
why'd you throw it away?
I was done with it.
Okay.
I would just leave it someplace when I'm done with it.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But I noticed that would happen to me. You get too precious about like the stuff that you're making, and it's like, oh wait, a gigantic corporate entity owns this, not me. So
right.
And that's
do
why
you think
personal work
that's
is very
more
important.
like juniors are on that scale rather than like the seniors are kind of, they get it usually?
I don't know. Probably not everybody feels that way, but I noticed like my arc through Disney was, you start off and you're just like, I'm going to put 1,000% into everything that I do, and then you kind of learn over time that like you should put the effort into like certain things more than other things. And one of the things that requires less effort probably is trying to control the direction of the show, because that's not what they want from you necessarily. Like, your input is good. All that you can do is give your input, and then maybe they'll listen to it, maybe they won't. But it's just useless to like stress yourself out or get like upset about things that are out of your control. I think that's like just generally good life advice, but especially at work.
Right. Got it.
I'm getting rambly.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's really good. Just thinking about it. Yeah. Okay, so Disney, you finished up at Disney 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What was the
about 2 years ago.
reason you made the leap to Netflix animation?
Yes. So I'd been at Disney for a long time, and although I thought everything was going great there. I just wanted something. I noticed that it wasn't like scary anymore. Like
Mm.
I was pretty comfortable doing my job, and I think I just wanted a little bit more out of it. I wanted the opportunity to do more design work stuff. I wanted to be a little bit more experimental, a little bit more on the art side. It's it can get exhausting doing production assets for animation because like not only does it have to hit certain appeal bars, but it has to be like technically perfect too, or
Mm.
it does if you're me. I'm
Yeah.
obsessive about that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
I'll get in there and I'll just like tweak vertices. Like there's not a single like edge or anything that I didn't touch and just obsess over. And all of us were doing that. And
Mm.
so it's like this attention to detail. And I was just feeling like kind of burned out doing that a little bit. Um,
Mm.
and also I wanted some new opportunities, but the most I guess like the biggest reason for me is yeah, it just wasn't feeling like scary anymore.
Huh.
I wasn't learning anything new necessarily.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I was like, I guess what the obvious solution to this is I should switch jobs in the middle of a pandemic and also do something I've never done before, which is work in series. So I went over to Netflix on a series. So totally different than feature,
Mm.
like totally different time schedule, different
Huh.
skill set to some degree. But
What?
the main
How is
thing
it different
was
in skill sets? Actually, curious.
well, because we're working with like a vendor studio, so there's a studio overseas that
Oh.
does like the actual like asset building and animation and stuff like that. So everything that we're doing on our side is like the art side of it. So it's like a little bit more top down, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right. Right.
Uh, yeah, so that's like a lot less technical stuff, and I get to worry more about how things look and how they work together, like these characters as an ensemble,
Yeah.
and just get into like more of the art side of it, I guess, and not worry so much about like whether or not all the spans and the lips line up, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. And
Yeah,
can
and
you say what you're working on, or that's hush?
oh yeah, the project is called My Dad the Bounty Hunter.
My
Yeah, so it's a
dad, the bounty
Netflix
hunter.
my dad the bounty hunter, and
Okay.
it's a yeah series. I think it's going to come out next year.
Okay.
But yeah, we just did.
Kid series, adult.
Yeah, it's like a I think I don't know. I think my wife would call it like a co-viewing thing. So it's like you could watch it with your kids.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there's honestly, it's I'm not just saying this because it's like my job, but it's some of the like most I don't know. I love sci-fi stuff and I love like adventure, like the 80s kind of like kid that gets a phenomenal opportunity to like go to space and do something that, it's almost
Okay.
like a genre, I think, that existed then. And so it's kind of like that, but it's so funny and it's so well paced. And it's just, I don't know. I'm blown away. Like the whole team, we're all like on Slack every week after an art review talking about like how are we doing this, how are we making the show. Everyone is so excited about it and
That's so
so
cool.
like collaborative. Yeah, because everyone is also like I've never been on a production like this, and then you've got other people from other productions that are like how are you doing this, like um this may never happen again where we have this type of like such a tight like collaborative group. And
Oh, that's
so yeah,
awesome.
I don't know,
Definitely got
it's
to check
it,
that out now. That's cool.
it's been like such a crazy stroke of luck to fall into this project because I don't know. I mostly just was like, oh, here's something that's really different, and I just jumped to it. So
Oh man, that's crazy.
let's do that again
Man,
in November.
damn, that's cool. Yeah, I got to check that out.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm
I see.
also
Oh,
like in a situation.
no, no, you go. You go.
Well, I was just gonna say the last thing I'll say about that, like it's very different. Like at Disney, as long as you're not like being upsetting to work with or something, like you're going to move on to the next project, right? So there's kind
Mm,
of like there's a slate, there's one thing after another, and more or less that you're going to go on to this,
right.
and like maybe you'll be a different title or something, but it's kind of like here's my job, this is where I work, and
Right.
whereas so now I'm kind of like in this environment where people just move from like one gig to another, and like something wraps and they got to go look for work again, they got to try to like always kind of like keep an eye on the horizon of what's next. So that's new to me. But I'm
Right. Right.
I think I needed it. I just needed that like kick in the ass a little bit.
Okay. Right. Cool. So a lot of changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Is your role more senior role at Netflix or?
It's because our team on this side of the ocean is like a lot smaller. It's mostly just the art team, and I'm the only 3D guy now or the only 3D character person on this now. But we had a couple other 3D guys that would come in and do some character designs and stuff, but like their roles wrapped earlier, they went on to something else. But I've been on the project throughout the whole course of it, so it's kind of nice to be like the main like central character person there, because I get to like have a lot of influence on that stuff. And I've really enjoyed that part of it, like being a little bit more hands-on and designery about it. Was that I feel like I totally blanked on your question.
No, that's all good. That's all good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's been cool though.
That's great. Awesome. We're sort of coming to the end here, but I did have one question I really want to get to is just I find it helpful to have like a guide, like a reference list of artists to look at that get it. Who do you look, or who would you recommend as like a portfolio of work from artists that you idolize or are really, really good, high quality
Oh my
character
god.
artists?
Well, okay. If you want to talk about like really great shapes and stuff, you can't do much better than like a Bruce Timm or a Shane Glines. They have really heavily influenced a lot of my work. I think you probably see in a lot of my drawings, there's that kind of thing going on. There's comic book artists that I think are really influential to me, and it may not be as obvious, but like I don't know, like Ben Caldwell or Ryan Otley, who did the Invincible for a really long time.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
just I think comic artists are great because they can kind of do everything. They have to do everything. So I think that after like reading a lot of that, you kind of learn some more stuff about that. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I had better answers for this kind of stuff, but my inspiration comes and goes in like waves, I think. And sometimes I'll just like really latch onto one person for a while, and I'll jump to something else. But those are kind of like a few of the
Yeah,
like
no, that's
through
fine. That's
line
fine.
artists that I
Well,
love.
I'll put
I
these
never have a great answer
links
for this.
in the show notes for people who want to check out those artists. And if
I'm
you
gonna
want to add,
hate
if you want to
watching
add
this
any more
again.
to the list though, because you have for sure forgotten, no one can remember on the spot. I can add those.
God.
You can let me know after. But yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh
Cool.
man.
No, don't beat yourself up. It's fine. It's not like a comprehensive like this is everything that you respect. It's like, yeah, what can you think of? That's cool. That's fine.
All right.
Awesome. Well, was there anything else you wanted to say to the world before we finish?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know. Take breaks. Try not to like throw everything that you have into making art all the time, because you'll burn yourself out if your work isn't doing that already. That's something I've had to learn during this.
Okay.
Yeah, man, my life is like a constant, like I'm sort of trying to like rebalance everything all the time, I guess. So I only find that out through failure, like the same as learning new art. But yeah, I think just like try to like prioritize your health, get sleep, take care of yourself, and bring in. You'll be surprised, I think, like how much bringing in inspiration from other sources maybe helps too. Like finding something that you're interested in doing outside of art, very valuable. Read a lot. That kind of stuff is like so much. At least to me, it's become so much more valuable to have an escape from art that isn't just like a waste of time. Do you know what I mean? So if I can kind of like pad out my knowledge in some way, or like I'm really into like self-help books and stuff, and trying to kind of like learn how to actually understand like my feelings and stuff. As silly as that sounds, it's really made like
fantastic.
tremendous difference in my life. So yeah, take care of yourself, I think.
Yeah, everyone's fighting their own battles, as they say, and figuring things out at different times of their life. It's super important.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think is really worth saying too is like, it goes kind of like with the comparison thing we were talking about earlier. you can't compare yourself to other people because everyone has like a totally different circumstance than you. But also, it's not just like what their day-to-day life is. Like I've been incredibly fortunate in my life to get to where I am right now. And like, not everyone has the same opportunities to do stuff. And so I feel like maybe that doesn't get addressed enough either.
Yeah, yeah,
That's been like a huge, huge benefit, of course. It's not just about like how much work you put in, how much time and effort, or like always finding the right source of information. I think that stuff is much easier to do now than it used to be. But, a lot of the people working today have tremendous benefits on their side, just from like being in the right place at the right time, or just like not having student debt or something like that. It makes
yeah,
such a huge difference. So that's
yeah,
another thing. Like you can't always compare yourself because everyone has such a different situation.
yeah. That's right. And it's
Yeah.
hard to know what that is, whether like on
Yeah,
what
totally.
whether you're on the
Just ask
the
them.
side that gets it, or
Yeah.
the side that is disadvantaged.
Yeah. That's
And you'll
why I
be
just ask
judging
everybody.
your work like on someone who's just got oodles of free time and no bills, if that
Right.
person exists.
Totally.
I don't know. Yeah.
God damn those people.
Those people selling NFTs, they've just got money sitting around.
Yeah. What the heck?
That's right.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
People are making insane amounts of money on that. But it feels like it just doesn't feel like I know all the information there. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm coming down hard in the middle of this
Yeah, that's
conversation.
right. I've picked my spot and I'm on the fence. Firmly
Yes.
on the
I
fence.
don't know what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. On one hand, it's like the NFT thing is it is the perfect storm of like outrage, right? Because
Oh my god.
I mean for so many reasons, but I think like the biggest is like artists generally are famously not very good at money, or at least asking for money.
Mm-mm.
And so then you
No.
have combined with that this almost this caricature of this rich art investor just tossing millions at art that sucks or that doesn't matter. And and so then you've got jealousy and like anger at this thing, and then there's this environmental debate that coincides with it, so there's pitchforks
Yeah.
going up everywhere. You really
Yeah.
couldn't
And it
ask
doesn't
for a more drama ridden
it's
space.
so oh my god, it's always fun to watch like art Twitter devolve and tear itself apart on some level, but like it's so crazy to see everyone is coming at it with like this fully formed 100% correct opinion, and they know what he has all the information. It's just like it's so strange, and there's people just like regurgitating arguments, so it becomes really cloudy and really strange because it's like the people who actually know what they're talking about get lost amongst
Hmm.
just like a sea of people who seem like maybe they just want to be angry about something. So
Yes, yes, that
yeah, and it's
that
like
too.
yeah, that's the worst thing about Twitter in general is that it's become so easy to just like attach yourself to outrage that doesn't affect you necessarily. Like there's
Yeah,
tons of outrage that's 100% justifiable and valid on there. But like when it comes to the NFT thing, I don't know. I see a lot of people who I think have good intentions, but they're just like calling for like the destruction of some artist because they made an NFT or something like that. It's like I just don't know enough about it to want someone to like have to live in a hole for the rest of their life for making this, you know?
yes, yeah.
I'm
I
not really
really,
sure that I'm on like the moral high ground there. I probably don't live the most like efficient life either. I just don't know. I don't know what the impact is. I haven't done the research. So
yeah, yeah. It's also hard to diagnose whether the argument is whether they actually understand it or if it's really just jealousy, because it's hard not to be jealous.
yeah.
I'll be
Oh
honest,
yeah,
I'm
sure.
jealous of so many
Definitely.
of these millionaires in the NFT
Yeah, I know
space.
that's conflicting too, right? Like, yeah, there's people making a ton of money apparently, and that's great. Like, I do kind of feel like, oh man, I wish I had thought to do that, or I wish that I
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
you know, generating that kind of stuff. But some of the stuff that you see too, it's like, would I really feel good about myself if I personally made that kind of art. Like,
Mm.
and that's not even a value judgment on the art. That's just me, the way that I like to make stuff. If I feel like I'm changing what I like to do to chase like dollars, then I feel like
Right. You don't
something
want to
has
do that.
gone wrong on some level. Obviously, you want to get
Right.
paid for making art, but like if your whole thing is like I make some weird thing that I never made before now just to make money, like I
Oh
don't know. I think that
yeah.
I would be
Yeah.
really upset about that.
I think
I'd be
though
depressed.
the best NFT artists usually aren't doing that. They're actually doing art that is only true to their style. Like,
Yeah, that's
I mean,
probably true.
there are obviously also that like kind of collectible or like just kind of, what would you call it, modern art? What's that art that isn't art? It's modern art, right? That's the category.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's got value to somebody, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I honestly think it's exciting. I think that it's going to introduce s- a new revenue source to so many artists. And here's the thing, to
Yes.
stand on my podium, if people compare the environmental aspect in a silo, right? Which is like if crypto didn't exist, and also the whole like the argument that the NFT things add to the crypto, like no, it's like it's going to generate, the train's going to run regardless. And yes, if you add more art to it and then it increases the value of the crypto, then there'll be more trains running or whatever, right?
Hmm.
There is that side of it, but it doesn't directly influence that you can't do that environmental cost per, which was this one guy who put together this website, which is now down supposedly from threats, but I think because it was just debunked. But yeah, he put together
Oh.
this site which was like, this artwork equated to 3 months of Europe's electricity consumption. You can't do that. It doesn't work
Oh
that way.
yeah,
Crypto is not
I saw that.
inside the block. It could be one artwork, it could be empty, it could be 1,000 artworks. It doesn't change the size or the amount of energy to create the block. So it was actually
Oh, interesting.
completely misunderstood. Um,
I suspected as much.
yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that kind of just like a lot of people read that and were like, "Holy shit!" So I think that also is, people have sort of misinformation around that.
Oh yeah, for
Journalists
sure.
love a shitstorm, so they just sort of took it and
Hmm.
went, "The environmental is this, this, and this, whatever." Um, nobody's talking about what it is in comparison to, which is that if you have an artist that needs to be self-sufficient and they need to make money in their career, they have to sell something, right? And I saw this video, and it was this guy who was this artist, and he said, my NFT artwork almost destroyed the environment. That was the title of this video. I guess now you can look it up and see who I'm talking about. But he talked about the cost of this. He was going to make this NFT piece, and then he realized the environmental cost, and he's canceled it. And then he ended the video by saying, "So, anyways, I'm not going to do the NFT thing. I'm going to continue selling my merchandise." And then you
Did I
look at
see
the
that?
cost of merchandise, and even with the worst case predictions for
Yes.
this NFT artwork thing, like selling 3 t-shirts or something stupid is the cost of like one NFT. Whereas like the
Yeah.
amount of money you get from the 3 t-shirts is maybe like $30. If you sold an NFT for $1,000, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yes.
one revenue, like if you have to make revenue and you could make it by selling one NFT, well, the damage to the environment would be drastically less. And that's not even getting into the whole point of what is driving the blockchain. It's just replacing cash, and then the amount of energy spent on cash is astronomical. Federal
Hmm.
backed, military backed cash. I mean, it's getting really, I mean, that's the thing. You go down this like spiral, and
Yeah.
you expect everyone else to read the same blogs and articles and
Yeah.
books that you have, and yeah.
Yeah. It's not as linear and easy to understand as it's made out to be, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a lot of cool, exciting stuff about it. I don't know, especially when it comes to like potential residuals for art and stuff, like using that to like blockchain contracts or something like that. I
Yeah.
can't remember where I was
Smart
reading it. Someone
contracts, yeah.
had proposed something like this. Yeah, smart contracts.
You
There's a
can
lot
share
of like,
revenue between artists very easily.
like
Upload it
automatically,
50-50. You get a
yeah,
carry
and
on 10% secondary sales forever. It's great
yeah,
for artists. It's fantastic.
it seems like it would be good. And like you said, it's not going away. So I hope that we can figure out a way to make
Yeah.
it, work for everybody. Not only work, but make it understandable so that people, get it. If I buy like a new, I don't know, electronic device around my house and plug it in, I have no idea how much energy that is using up. It's,
Yeah.
I guess I could find out, but I really don't. Like, that's
Yeah.
about as far as my knowledge goes on that.
Yeah. Or the cost of like
So somebody-
creating the good as well. Like how many
Oh
you know,
yeah, I've got
transportation
on
of the
all day long.
materials, mining it, all that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about like NFT versus like merch, though. I think I saw like Bobby Chu talk about that.
Mm.
He's talking about how like he was going to do an NFT and everyone on Twitter was like, "We'll kill you if you do this." And so he was like, "Okay, I guess I won't." But I was trying to offset merchandise costs. So like, what's better, this or that? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, dude, that's the thing that made me realize like the art community is not supportive at all. People say it is, but it's like
Yeah,
I've seen the
it can
most
be.
disgusting stuff directed at some artists that I love who are just like they were making money from Patreon or they were working at a studio that sucked and now they're able to make what they actually love and what they do and they're met with the most heinous comments I've ever read and I'm like, no, this poor person is so nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's bad. Only the yeah, it's terrible. Everyone
Yeah.
seems like they're so ready to jump down someone else's throat. Or just
Yeah.
jump on like the backstabbing pile. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like we got another
It's,
one, boys. Get them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
most yeah, it's crazy. Only the adult art community is supportive.
Oh yeah,
It seems
the
like.
adult art community. Oh my
They all love each other.
That's true. Let your freak
It's
flag
great.
fly. Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually remember
Yep.
that from your CG Futures talk in Melbourne. You were
Oh.
showcasing your work of all the characters you'd made, and you mentioned the one that you made for Zootopia, the tiger in the dance at
Uh-huh.
the end, and you're like,
Oh yeah.
the furry community really dig this character.
Oh yeah. They really support some characters.
They
Yeah,
must have loved
those are
that
the most
movie
positive
overall,
people
actually.
on Twitter. Probably.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a
I don't know why.
weird ending to the podcast. But where can people find you?
Everything begins and ends with furries. People can find me on Twitter. Just D Ekren on Twitter and on Instagram. Hopefully less and less. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
D Ekren, Instagram, Twitter, and you are also on ArtStation, D Ekren.
Oh yeah,
ArtStation.
I just need to update that. I'm way overdue.
Yeah, your last artwork was posted 3 years ago, so.
Oh, thanks. Yes.
Got to get on that. Just thought I'd drop that in at the end there. No.
feels longer. Well, I guess I know I'm staying up late tonight.
No.
Gotta get back to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Dylan. Great to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.